Hi, I'm Jesse with Canine Perspective, and I'm putting together this video to explain what makes our board and train and daycare and training programs different from other training facilities. One of the key things is that we record, or I record, the first session of everything that is taught with the dog. Okay, so the first week or 1 week board and train, or the first week of a multiple week board and train, is where all the learning is. Okay, so those videos can range anywhere between 2 hours to up to 3.5 hours, okay, depending on the dog. If the dog's more difficult, it's going to take a little bit longer. But what I want the owner to see is the learning process. I want the owner to see, that their dog becomes stressed, that their dog become nervous, fearful, anxious, that their dog become defensive, that their dog try to run. Like all these things, I want the owner to see, so that they see how I work with the dog to work them through these things, okay? And this is super important because with most board and trains, you drop your dog off, they're being trained, and then you pick them up, and you don't know how they went from point A to point B, okay, if they even got to point B. So I believe that learning process for the owner is very important because it shows the progress that their dog has made, starting at the very beginning, going to the very end. And you can typically see this because if you're doing a 1 week board and train, so why the first week is most expensive is because that's where most of the work is. So there's a lot of filming going on, there's a lot of training going on. I'm explaining everything, which is why the videos are so much longer than the rest of the program if we're doing a longer, 2 to 4 week program. So we always start with heel. Heel is always the baseline for teaching a remote collar, even in our in-person sessions. So typically the layout of what we call the explanatory sessions is the first video is going to be how we find your dog's working number, and I'm actively working with the dog to show the owner, to give them visual. Every dog is different, which is why we do a video for every dog, every respective dog that completes our board and train program. So the first thing is always working levels. Then we move on to teaching heel, or the first half of heel, which is the foundation of everything, and then I go into the place command, okay? And I always like to start with heel in place because heel is very important for teaching a dog how the pressure turns on, how it turns off. Place, because duration work is a part of our daily activity where dogs do at least an hour a day for our daycares and our boarders if they've trained with us. For our boarding trains, however, they do up to 4 hours, if not more, divided into 2 long sessions. We have an AM session and a PM session, okay? So right when I've started place on day 1, they're already jumping into a long 2-hour stationary session from that day going forward. So typically the first 3 days of the board and train, I teach heel in place. Then the second day, I'll add in the verbal cue of heel, stay from heel position. And then the third day, I'm teaching sit down and then recall all through pressure. Okay, so that by the 4th day, the dog is now going through all the commands. So all these things are recorded. I edit them, I email them to the owner to show the learning process. I explain the training process so that when the owner picks up their dog, if they're only doing a 1 week, they have a good concept of how the dog was taught and what to do to reinforce the training. And then for every week after the first week, the video is typically shorter and shorter because all the training has been done, all the learning has been done. Now we're putting more effort into advancing the dog's training to an off-leash level. So first week is on-leash, what we call on-leash foundation, except for the recall. Recall was done with the long leash, because that's a distance command. The second week, we already transitioned the dog over to the long leash, typically a 10 to 15 foot line, to begin off-leash foundation. The third week, we're working the dog, if they're social, with the long leash in a distraction setting, otherwise in a playpen where there's other dogs and they're able to be around them and then play and then go into obedience and then play and then go into obedience. So we're actively applying the obedience while they're in a play session. The 4th week is now the dog is going from no leash in the play group into, from long leash in the play group to no leash in the play group, okay, on the 4th week. For our antisocial dogs, it's a similar process, except we would work them with the long leash where all our activity is. Because they're antisocial, we can't have them in the social group, but we do have them in the activity room where there's dogs on treadmills, dogs doing stationary work, dogs in play, all that stuff. There's things going on, so we still have distraction. They're just not in the thick of the distraction, okay? So each video after the first week is always shorter, because the first week is I'm teaching and explaining and conditioning everything. By the second week, the dog is conditioned. Now we're advancing to the long leash, and I'm explaining to the owners how they'll want to practice to develop that long leash skill set until they can get to a fully off leash. The third week, we transition that to the play group with the long leash, and then by the fourth week to the play group, no long leash, okay? So the dog then already has a baseline for everything, and it's really me just showing the steps of this is how you want to advance your dog with your training once you pick them up to continue towards the off-leash reliability, okay? So typically, our board and trains and daycare and trains are getting anywhere between, I would say, 6 hours plus. So 4 of those hours at minimum are going to be stationary control with the dog practicing place command. And then the other 2 hours are going to be divided up against myself and my staff, where they're reinforcing the training, they're using the dog skill sets, they go on training walks. After the first day, once they've learned to heel command, they go out on training walks so that we're applying the training outside in a real world environment. So because we're trying to break out of just controlled contexts, within the facility. So, the dog's being handled by multiple personality types, men, women, tall, short, soft, assertive personalities, like all types of people, which helps the dog understand, like, okay, like I have to listen to everyone essentially. So then, the other thing that separates our board and train program is the follow-ups. I always suggest that owners do research on the programs that they're going to use. You would be surprised how many programs are out there that only give you a 30-minute follow-up. So if you drop your dog off for a 2-week board and train and you pick them up, you're literally just getting like a 30-minute session, which is, in my opinion, not nearly enough to cover everything that the dog learned within that time frame. Okay, our programs come with at least 2 hours for every week that we have the dog. So if you do a 1-week board and train, you get 2 1-hour lessons. If you do a 2-week board and train, you get 4 1-hour lessons. And if you do a 3 to 4 week, you get 6 to 8 1-hour lessons, right? But the videos that we provide to our dog owners really clarify most of the training. And the follow-ups are more so used to help close the gap on anything the owner may not be understanding correctly. Typically, recall is a big one. They usually get, because recall is very coordination heavy, so they usually need help with that. Or if their dog has reactivity. We typically don't do a whole lot of behavior cases here at the facility, especially if it's human aggression. I always tell my clients you want to do an in-person because you want to learn the process. You want to do this yourself. But if the dog is dog reactive or dog aggressive, but the owner doesn't really care about the dog being social, they just want to walk their dog in peace, then we can do that at the facility because that's not really that complicated. But if during the board and train program, if we don't see behaviors, we unfortunately cannot work on the behaviors. So if there's anything that the program did not cover in regards to behavior like resource guarding or reactivity, or any other kind of behavioral issue like separation anxiety, like we can't recreate those things. We can try, but we can't guarantee that we can. Then the owners may use their follow-ups to help address those issues, okay? So the follow-ups don't have to be only on what's covered with the program. Essentially it's just our time. The dog has already been trained obedience-wise, and the owner just needs help in other areas. We're more than happy to use those follow-ups to help correct those things, okay? So our board and train programs come with plenty of training all throughout the day. The dogs do get breaks. They do get to socialize if they're social and play and all that stuff. But we're really geared towards making sure that we are training the dog. So socialization and things like that aren't really at the forefront of our radar. But if the dog is easygoing and very social, we'll integrate them. Otherwise, we primarily focus on making sure the dog is leaving here trained, and that the owner has a very good understanding of what their dog has learned in the time that they were with us, okay? So the only difference between a board and train program and a daycare and train program is simply that the board and train, we have the dog 24/7 for a week to 4 weeks. And a daycare and train, we would have the dog between 7 and 7, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, okay? And we typically recommend that clients that do daycare and train bring their dogs Monday through Friday, because on the weekends it's typically slower, not a lot of stuff going on. Plus we have less staff, and when during the week we have more, just busier and all that stuff. So it's making sure that we get lots of distractions going on. The daycare and training program also works in tandem with the owner. So after the first 3 days, because it takes me 3 days to film everything, once the owner receives their first week video, I'll tell them, start practicing stuff. So when you bring your dog in for the daycare and train, you can say like, hey, I tried working on recall, but it looks like my dog's having some trouble. Then we know what we need to focus on during the daycare and train. So it kind of works in tandem with the owner, and we work as a team to get the dog trained. So other than that, this is what separates our board and train and daycare and train programs from others. I always suggest doing your research, understanding how your dog was trained, how your dog learned. Are you getting plenty of follow-up so that you can reinforce and retain the training that your dog has received? I unfortunately have worked with many a client throughout the years who either they didn't get any real follow-up training from the trainer, or there was like unlimited training in a group setting, but now they're there with like 5 other people and everybody's got their own questions, and it's constricted to an hour. So 6 people in an hour is 10 minutes per person. All of our follow-up training is one-on-one with the owners of the dog, so that we make sure we're fully focusing on your needs. Okay, so I'm Jesse with Canine Perspective, and thank you for watching.